Hello everyone, welcome back to Age of Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. In this video, we're going to have a look at a couple lists for the Legion of Sacrament. Now, like the previous videos I've done regarding the Legion of Blood and the Legion of Night lists, we'll be doing two lists in this video. One of them will include the appropriate Mortarch, of course being Arkhan for this one, and then there'll be a list not including him. So, to start with, we're going to have a look at Arkhan's list. So, starting with our general, Arkhan the Black, Mortarch or Sacrament. He has to be the general as he is included in his own legion, which makes sense, but we want him as a general on this list anyway. So his Law of the Dead spell is Soul Harvest, which is one of the Death Mage's spell. Now, Soul Harvest is one of those ones that is, well, I'll tell you what it does. So it casts on a 7, and then if you successfully cast it, each enemy unit within 3 inches of the caster suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now, for every wound they take and it's not negated, roll a dice, and on a 5 up, the caster will heal a wound previously taken from him. So, within 3 inches is a bit, it's not bad, but it's a bit iffy, to be honest. A lot of the time it's only going to affect 1 unit, maybe 2, and, he might heal 1 or 2 wounds, which, is not too bad. However, when he is the general and uses his command ability, which extends the range of any spells, from like death wizards within 18 inches of him in your army. Now, because they've extended the range of that spell by 6 inches, now Soul Harvest, instead of it being 3 inches, is now 9 inches. So now it becomes just a massive, because as every enemy unit within 9 inches of him, it's going to take D3 mortal wounds, effectively an arcane bolt, and then roll a dice. For every mortal wound the enemy took and was not negated, and for every 5 up, the caster, Arkhan in this situation, will heal a wound he has previously taken. So this can make him incredibly survivable. Of course he has to, get to the hero phase to be able to do this spell, and he's only got 11 wounds, so he could die, especially if the enemy gets a double turn on him, he could easily die. However, if they don't, and Arkhan's in a combat, which he's quite, shall we say, comfortable with winning, and there's not a huge threat from enemy shooting, he can be pretty survivable with this spell, especially how he's healing 2 wounds at the end of a combat phase where he slays any enemy models. It's just an extra way for him to heal wounds. So yep, that's him. He's got to be in a list anyway, because he is Arkhan the Black, Mortarch or Sacrament. He is the leader of the Legion of Sacrament, so of course there has to be a list with him in it. Also, his command ability to extend the spell range of all friendly death wizards within 18 inches of him is huge, especially if you're going magic heavy in this legion. So after him we have 2 necromancers. The first one has got an artifact, wristbands of black gold. Now that is for every wound or mortal wound the bearer of this artifact takes in the shooting phase. Roll a dice, on a 4 up it's ignored, so this is really good, just makes him that bit more survivable, especially if the enemy's got a lot of shooting, especially a lot of sniping shooting, and with his ability to be able to pass on wounds to a death unit that's nearby, it can make a small model with a 6 up save pretty durable. And then his Law of the Death Mage's spell is Overwhelming Dread. I've talked about this lots before. It's pick an enemy unit within 18 inches, I believe it casts on a 5. That enemy unit is now -1 to hit and -1 to their bravery, which is absolutely huge. I think, to be honest, that's probably too good for a 5 up casting. However, it's not so much the casting value you need to beat, it's if you're playing against things like Zeech or other high magic armies, you just got to try and make sure it's not unbinded. But anyway, it's a very good spell. And then the next necromancer doesn't have an artifact, but he does have the Law of the Death Mage's spell, Spectral Grasp. Now, the reason why I really like this is because pick a terrain feature in 18 inches of him, and enemy units within 3 inches of that terrain feature have to halve their movement characteristics. I can't remember what the casting value of this is. I think it's about a 5 or a 6. However, it's just such a good spell because I've talked about this many times, but movement is so important in Age of Sigmar. As soon as you can half your enemy's move characteristics, and let's just say, it's what I like to call the perfect storm scenario, where the scenery piece is in the middle of their army and most of their army gets affected by this, I can tell you the enemy would not have seen this coming. And then even when they have, they can see your army laid out in front of them, and you tell them what the spells are. Because death is still quite new, or our new abilities, the enemy still might not see this coming, so they won't prepare for it, especially when they're building lists, having their movement halved. I mean, like, if we consider my main first-year court army, which is the Dead Watch army, which is just basically all crit flares. So I'm used to my army, most of it, moving at least 12 inches. And then as soon as the enemy did this to me, my movement would now be moving 6 inches. Well, it isn't slow, but when I'm used to most of my units having a 12-inch movement and can fly, and now it's just 6 inches and can fly, that would completely screw up my game plan. So it just shows how good this is. Our next leader, and our last leader, is a Vampire Lord. Now, she's on a Nightmare. She's got the artifact Shroud of Darkness, and this basically makes enemy units, if they're within 8 inches of her in the shooting phase, -1 to hit. If they're outside 8 inches of her, -2 to hit. I think this is... It's one of my favourite artifacts in the whole Legions of Nagash, just because I play against a lot of heavy shooting armies, and making the enemy -2 to hit, especially if they do things like more wounds on 6s, you know, like Skyfires, it's just absolutely huge. So, like I say, it doesn't, you know, make her attacks any better, but it's just a normal Vampire Lord, so not bothered. It just makes her a lot more survivable, because her spell is the Amorphine Orb. Now, what this does, as I've mentioned a lot before, is draw an imaginary 12-inch line from the caster's base and pick a point and draw 12 inches there, and then the line is 1 millimeter wide, so it's basically as thin as you can get, and then basically any enemy or friendly units underneath this line take d6 mortal wounds on a 4 up. Now, as you can imagine, that's really good, especially what I plan to do with her is just have her on the flank. She's got the Shroud of Darkness, so she can protect herself against enemy shooting, and when, you know, like, that, you know, if you can imagine the traditional battle lines crash in the middle of the board, she can go along the flank, get just on the enemy side of the board, and then cast this Amorphine Orb down, and because she'll be within 18 inches of Arkhan and his more important command ability, it would add 6 inches to the spell range. So instead of drawing a 12-inch line, now you draw an 18-inch line, which an 18-inch line is absolutely huge for a spell like this, particularly if you roll a 9 or more unmodified when you cast this. You get to resolve the effects of the spell twice, and 18 inches is just an absolute huge range. So yeah, that's why I've got this, because why wouldn't you take the Amorphine Orb when you can add 6 inches to the range of it? So with our leaders done, we then move on to our units. So we're going to have 2 blocks of 40 skeletons, as that happens to be in most of my lists. And like I say, the job of these are pretty simple. You know, they just bunker on objectives. They're very hard to shift, and they're not bad in a fight either, particularly if the enemy has got low saves. So yeah, exactly what they say on the tin. Very durable, not bad in a fight, but they're mainly just there to bunker on the objectives and for your necromancers to hide in them. And then our third battle line unit is direwolves. Again, of course, I have talked about them quite a bit, and I do include them. And this is just a unit of 5, so it might not sound like much, but just to keep in the back objectives or something, just for the numbers at the back, is very useful, especially how fast they are and just how good they are for their points. Then we move on to our sledgehammer of the army, is the Morgos Harbingers. So this is a unit of 4. They have the Spirit Hellbards, because I just think they're a lot better with their 3 attacks, freeze and freeze, -2 rend, 3 damage. I prefer the less attacks for the higher rend and the more damage with these, just so they can break into the things that the enemy has got high armor saves. You know, you're playing against Stormcast 2 up saves, rerolling 1s, usually they just laugh at your no rend. When you chuck a -2 rend at them, they start dying like anything. So that's why I like these guys. The reason I've gone for Harbingers is just to make the charges more reliable, as it's just so important to get the charge in when you want to make sure the enemy doesn't charge you. Even when, like, you know, Morghast don't get any benefit when they make the charge. They don't get, oh, when they charge you get +1 attack or anything. Nothing like that. However, you would then be able to make sure that, okay, your turn, you charge for the Morghast Harbingers, say you haven't charged for anything else. I was going to say you definitely get to attack them first, however, there's a couple of abilities out there that can let the enemy attack you beforehand, but we'll forget about this for now. So most of the time, you charge a unit, you'll get to attack with it before the enemy gets to attack you. And with a unit of 4 Morghost Harbingers, that does sell a lot, especially when they have got Spirit Halberds. So that's why I like them. And then moving on to our last unit is the Behemoth, which is the Mortis Engine. So as you can guess why I've got the Mortis Engine in here, because it just +1 to your casting rolls, and it's got a few extra abilities here and there which aren't bad, but the main reason we've got them in here is because, of course, as you can guess by now, we've got the Lords of Sacrament Battalion. So what this includes is Arkhan the Black, a Mortis Engine, and at least 2 Necromancers. So that's what we've got on the list, and what that does is, if units from that battalion are within 6 inches of the Mortis Engine from the same battalion, they will get a +1 to their save in the shooting phase, and then if they're within 6 inches of it, they get to cast an additional spell in your hero phase, which obviously just makes them a lot better at what they do. I mean, just casting an extra spell is huge, especially when like the 2 spells you got for your Necromancers, Spectral Grasp and Overwhelming Dredge, you'll be casting them most of the time. However, now that you can cast an extra one, you can cast Van Hell's Dance Macabre on your Skeleton Warriors if you really need to. It gives you the option. And then also things like Mystic Shield, Arcane Bolt, you've got that. And particularly how with Arkhan the Black, I'm always going to be doing Curse of Years with him, because obviously that's such a good spell, and I'm sure you guys know what it does, and it can have the potential of doing nothing, but it also has the potential of absolutely wiping out a enemy unit, just deletes it basically if you get really, really lucky. And that's really, really, I don't know what the chances of it are. It's incredible low chance of you being able to do that. However, I always give it a go because you never know. However, with him only being able to cast 2 spells, normally it's a bit like, I might as well just do another spell, not be silly and risk it. However, now he's casting 3 spells, you can do a risk, and then you've got 2 extra spells that a bit more reliable, things like Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield. So that is why I've got that battalion in there, and it's only 70 points, but I feel like this is an absolute bargain for what you're getting. And it makes your drops fewer, of course, because in this army we've only got 6 drops, which I know isn't super low, or you might not even call it low, but compared to a lot of armies out there, I mean, you've got the stereotypical type, like 1-drop Khorne armies, you've got potentially 1-drop Stormcast, maybes each, and maybe faster. The top tournament armies can obviously drop everything in one go if they really want to. However, with Death now, there are some ways to do it, but realistically you're not. You're going to get probably lowest on average in Death is probably about a 3-drop army, and then most of them are 4 drops onwards. So having 6 drops is not bad. And then so the main things with this is the 2 Necromancers. One of them will go in one block of 40 skeletons, the other one will go in the other block of 40 skeletons, just so they can pass on their damage there, and then they're always in range of those skeletons to bring back, to resurrect the Skeleton Warriors through Deafening Invocation. And then we've got the Vampire Lord, like I said, going on the flank to try and do that Amifying Orb line, which is 80 inches, is absolutely huge, down the length of the enemy's battle line. And then we've got Arkhan, the Mortarch of Sacrament, who's going to be hanging around the Mortis Engine most of the time. However, as I imagine this, you would have your 2 blocks of skeletons sort of centralised on the table, maybe a little bit to each flank, and then you would have your Mortis Engine in the middle behind them, next to Arkhan, and then you would have your 2 Necromancers. Like I say, in each blocks of those Skeleton Warriors you have one of your Necromancers, but they will be sort of like on the corner, so it's still basically within range to pass on their damage to Skeleton Warriors, but also in range of the 6 inches for the Mortis Engines, cast those extra spells and get +1 to their save. And it would make them, I don't want to say really durable, but compared to what they're normally like, basically really durable. So that's the list there, which, to be honest, out of all the I say out of all the lists I've came up with for the Mortarchs, I mean, compared to Neferata's list I came up with and Manfred's, and to be honest with those lists, they are quite quickly on coming up with them. I haven't actually tested them out, they were just a bit of fun, came up with, and compared to them, I do feel like this list, I would prefer to take it because I think it could be stronger than the other ones I came up with, and was still the narrative theme, because I could have had Vargheists in this army instead of Morghast, because they might have been worth it, because you get, you know, more attacks for your points. However, I don't feel like Vargheists fit into Arkhan's Legion. I'm not saying they're not, you know, you can't do it. You absolutely can do it. It probably, you know, it's not a bad thing. It's probably a better list than what I came up with. But I feel like Morghast theme the army a bit better, you know, narratively, and not just narratively, like looks wise and stuff. So that's why I've got them in here instead of a couple of things. I have tried to make this list feel quite narrative, so that's the reason behind that. And then, of course, 90 points this list costs, so who knows, you might get a triumph, you might not. If you do get a triumph, however, you know, like I say, just getting those once per game rerolls for the whatever unit you're using it on. You know, if it's the hits, you know, Morghast our favourite type. If it's to make sure Arkhan stays alive a bit longer and it's the save, there you go. So moving on to the next list, like I say, this is the one that does not include Arkhan the Black. We have for our general a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, because at this point, if you're not having a Mortarch as your general, why not have a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, unless you're taking a Grand Host off Nagash list, which we'll get to in another video. But for this list anyway, so we've got the Vampire Lord on a Zombie Dragon. He is the general. We've got the Emissary of the Master, which is a command trait that allows friendly death units within 6 inches of him to reroll failed charge rolls. So remember, this will include your general being the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon as well, because he's always within range of himself. And then the units you want to charge as well. So I think that was a really good ability, especially to be able to, if it was just reroll, you know, charge rolls for the general, it wouldn't be bad. However, because it affects all your death units within 6 inches of him, is really big. So that's why I like that, because I've talked about many times how important it is to get the charges on your terms. Even if you don't have a charge bonus, you're making sure that if the enemy does have a charge bonus, they're not using it, and you get to attack when you want to. So the Emissary of the Master, that's why I've given him that. And then for his weapon loadout and stuff, obviously he's got the Death Lance, Shield and Chalice, because that's the best loadout you can give him. And then he's got for his artifact Shroud Darkness, because this is, like I say, one of my favourite artifacts in the whole Legion of Nagash, which, you know, enemy shooting within 8 inches of him is -1, enemy shooting outside of 8 inches of him is -2. And remember, most of the enemy sniping shooting and things like artillery, things like high damage shooting that aren't monsters necessarily, is going to be outside of 8 inches of him. You know, if you're looking at Skyfires, looking at Stormcast, Raptor, Long Strikes, I think they're called. They're big crossbow units that, you know, have like a 30-inch range if they just stand still and they can shoot you. And the important thing is, like, those two units, for example, like I say, they're going to be outside of 8 inches of you more than likely, and they do mortal wounds on 6s, and of course there are ways to plus to their hit rolls, but you're minusing 2 to them, so you're putting them in a very tight spot. So that's why I got that. And then for his spell, he's got Amplifying Orb, because, like in this list, it's only going to be a 12-inch range. However, I just think the Amplifying Orb is really good, pretty risky, but not too risky for it to not be reliable. So that's why he's got that. And particularly how he's going to be in the midst of it. He's going to be fighting. He's not going to be staying back, you know, behind your own line, going, well, I can't cast it because I'm going to cut through my own line. He's going to be on the front line. So that's why he's got that. And then, you know, if he's not in the front line, if, you know, you're just waiting before you charge him, you can just put a Mystic Shield on himself, can't you? And then for our next two heroes, we have Necromancers. So the first one has Overwhelming Dread, which I talked about in the last list, which I think is really good. Anything that can make the enemy -1 to hit, you would take, generally. I mean, a lot of people took a Mongol just to make the enemy -1 to hit. Now you've got a spell that does that, and it makes them -1 to their bravery as well, which, you know, is an extra bonus. And then the next Necromancer has Spectral Grasp, which, you know, is picking the train feature, and then enemy units from 3 inches of it have to half the move characteristics, which is absolutely fantastic and should not be underrated, in my opinion. So they are all our leaders, so not many, if I'm honest. And then obviously the Vampire Lord's going to charge forward, and then the two Necromancers are going to be situated, one in each of our units of 40 Skeleton Warriors, which, you know, it's a common thing. You know, they're both going to have spears, because It's a bigger size unit, spears are more effective, you know, you might not be getting the extra +1 to hit what swords give you, however, you'll be getting an extra rank of skeletons in range of the enemy to attack effectively. So yeah, they're fantastic bunker unit, they're not bad enough to fight if the enemy doesn't have a really high save, and they're really durable. So yeah, fantastic and really good for their points, in my opinion. And then the next unit is Direwolves. Again, I mean, this is almost just a copy and paste of what I have done in every single list I've came up with, but for me it works really well and that's why I like it. However, in this list we have a unit of 10 Direwolves rather than a unit of 5. So like I say, you keep them back so they can hold the back objective. If the enemy's going to, you know, deep strike things behind you, and when I mean deep strike things, I don't mean like deep strike monsters and things, I just mean like if they've got a mediocre unit, they're going to deep strike behind you just to try and take your objective you've left behind. The 10 Direwolves might be able to deal with it, because that would be, if they all get to attack, that would be 20 attacks, 4s and 4s, no rend 1 damage, and if they charge, you know, 4s and 3s, no rend 1 damage. It's not bad. They've got a 5-up save, and if anything, if the enemy does something you didn't expect and suddenly deep strike something behind you, the Direwolves might be able to hold the line long enough for you to be able to drag something back from the front to come and help them out and hold your objective. And yeah, they're really fast unit, and a unit of 10 of them for 120 points, you know, 20 wounds for 120 points is not bad, especially with a 5-up save. We then have our Morghast Harbingers, and now here we have a unit of 6 with Spirit Hellbards. So again, that is a huge unit. I mean, when I say again, I mean like a unit of 4 I think is the biggest thing I came up with. And a unit of 6 might seem a bit obsessive, especially at 660 points. However, if you were to look at a monster which costs 660 points, it's not likely going to have an attack that, you know, we added all these Morghast Harbingers with their Spirit Hellbards attacks together. What does that give us? That gives us, that's 18 attacks, 3s and 3s, -2 rend, 3 damage. If there was a monster with 18 attacks, 3s and 3s, -2 rend and 3 damage, for 660 points, I mean, that's a lot of points, but I think a lot of people would take it, especially if it had like 36 wounds as well. I think it's really, really tough. And again, probably the biggest challenge for this unit is, okay, well, you've got 6 of them, but what's the point? You know, you're not going to be able to get all 6, you know, in the charge, or be able to attack the enemy. There's going to be some that have to stagger behind, and you need to pole them in, and things like that. However, they've got 2-inch range for the Hellbards to start with. And then they've got, because they're Harbingers, when they go to charge, they roll 3 dice instead of 2, and additionally they can charge up to 18 inches instead of 12. Pair this with our Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon command trait, Emissary of the Master, which allows you to re-roll failed charge rolls. Now, you would have to re-roll all your charged dice rather than just going, I don't know, if you need to make a 10-inch charge and you roll, you know, your 3 dice and you get a 6 and 2 1s. You can't just go, I'm going to re-roll the 2 1s. You would have to re-roll all of it, including the 6, which, you know, might be a bit risky doing that sometimes. However, I think more than enough of the times you're going to, you know, re-roll those dice, because like I say, in that situation we've got 2 1s and 1 6, and you don't really want to re-roll that 6. Your 2 1s you got, on chances you're going to get a better result for them. So it's a unit that can charge really far. It's re-rolling charge rolls, so all 6 of those Morghast Harbingers should be able to attack in that combat phase. And obviously you'll be charging them in with the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, so what I'd suggest is attack with the Morghast Harbingers probably first, depending on what you're attacking, and then the Zombie Dragon later, because the Morghast Harbingers are going to take up a big footprint in front of the enemy units, and their damage output will be a lot more than the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. So that is the list. Now that comes in at a solid 2,000 points, so no chance of getting a triumph here. However, I feel like the list, well, I was going to say I feel like the list doesn't need it. I mean, to be honest, every list would be nice if you got a triumph. However, it's not necessary for this. I think you're comfortable. You've got your 3, you know, well, you've got 2 big blocks of skeletons that bunker on the middle objectives. You've got a unit of 10 direwolves that, you know, is fairly confident at holding that back objective pretty well. And then you've got your 2 necromancers to do your 2 favourite spells, you know, Spectral Grasp and Overwhelming Dread. You've got a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, which, you know, of course, can put a spell on himself, you know, be a Mystic Shield, make himself have a 2-up save, makes him much more durable. He's got -2 for the enemy to hit him in shooting, and he's got, like I say, the Amplify Morb, which when he gets into the fight, he can do hopefully a lot more against the enemy. And you'll be charging him in with the Morgoth Harbingers, which is an absolutely devastating unit. You know, like 18 attacks, freeze and freeze, -2 rend, and 3 damage, and in total they've got 36 wounds. Is absolutely huge, I think. Yeah, you could take Morgoth Archai, and to be honest, they are my favourite to look at. They're definitely my favourite models with all the armour. That's how I built mine. I don't care if their special rule might not be as good as the Harbingers, but their special rule with the armour is a 5-up mortal wound save, which, depending on the army, is very good. However, with this, I just want them to basically get guaranteed charges. 3 dice when charging and being able to re-roll them is absolutely huge, I feel. So that is the second list I came up with, and that's the last one. So we've done a list on Arkhan, the Mortal Archer Black. I mean, like, the good thing about Arkhan is that for 320 points, I would say he's worth it. I would like him to have 12 wounds. I mean, I'd also like him to have a 3-up save, but, you know, I'm not too bothered about that. I would just like him to have 12 wounds because, you know, most monsters that have 320 points have, you know, at least 12 wounds, so I'd like that. And then, but apart from that, he's absolutely solid. He has a spell that can either do nothing or it can just delete things automatically. Doesn't matter if the enemy's got a more wound save, it will just delete it if he gets really lucky. And his command ability, extending the range of spells by 6 inches, is very big. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't give, in the second list, the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, the command trait that gives him that command ability to extend the range of spells, you know, within death wizards within 18 inches of him by 6 inches. I didn't think it was necessary. I think with him, he's got a really nice command ability as it is. He can put it on himself, which will allow him to reroll failed hit rolls into your next hero phase. However, I would definitely 100% put it on the Morgoth Archive, because now you've got, or the Morgoth Harbingers, sorry, as they are on this list, because then you've got 18 attacks, hitting on freeze, re-rolling failed hits, wounding on freeze, -2 rend, 3 damage. I would not want to be on the receiving end of that at all in any way. However, if you don't feel like it's necessary to put that command ability on them, you can always put Inspiring Presence on your Skeleton Warriors just to make them even that more durable. So they will last into your next hero phase for all your grave sites and your necromancers to resurrect them. Which, you know, like a unit of 40 Skeleton Warriors, you might look at it and you might think, oh, you know, that's pretty durable, you know, doesn't matter if the enemy kills, you know, 20 of my Skeleton Warriors, I'm just going to resurrect so many in my hero phase. You know, when you first think of that, you think, yeah, that's true. However, then you think, actually, what about Battle Shock? And then it's so easy for units to run away in Battle Shock. I mean, if you've got a unit of 20 Skeleton Warriors, you know, sorry, a unit of 40 Skeleton Warriors, and, you know, 20 of them got killed, then that's an automatic 8 running away anyway, because at that point you'd be Bravery 12, and then plus D6. Now, they wouldn't wipe out the unit, but it would make it very hard to bring it back up to full strength, and to be honest, that's probably a nice scenario of giving you. A lot of the time it's like 30 Skeleton Warriors die and then they're just gone. Can't bring them back on nothing, they're just absolutely gone. So Inspiring Presence, like I say, is really useful there. So yeah, you've got Skeleton Warriors to bunk on the objectives, you've got your Harbingers to be the hammer along with the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, and then your Necromancers for magic support. So that was the last list, and I think the last list is definitely something I'd like to try out. It's probably the list I'd like to try out the most compared to what I came up with so far on my, you know, the previous videos I've done. And you might be wondering why none of these lists have included the, is it the Death March Battalion, which I think is the, it's the Death Rattle Battalion, which includes 3 units of Skeleton Warriors, a unit of Grave Guard, a unit of Black Knights, and a White King. And that's simply because I think it's absolutely not very good, in a nice way to say it. It was a battalion that was, you know, quite good, fairly good, especially it was like the only like Death Grand Alliance battalion, if you want to look at it like that. I thought, you know, it's very confident. However, now that they've changed it, and it's like, oh well, it didn't really need to be nerfed, but you just nerfed it anyway, so okay, you've done that. That battalion's never going to see the light of day again. So that's why I haven't included it in here. If you want to see my, you know, want to hear my full opinions on it, you know, if you want to block your eardrums or something, I put that on the FAQ video I did, as I did go on a huge bitching session on that regarding that battalion, and that's why I don't really want to get into it again. So that's why I haven't got it in any of these lists. However, I feel like the last list I came up with, how many drops has that got? That's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So quite a few drops. You're probably, you know, you might not be going first in a lot of games. However, like I've mentioned before, if you can plan to, you know, worst case scenario, not being able to go first or being elected to go first, what could be even worse, as long as you can plan for that and just get lots of practice in, it won't be too much of a problem. So yeah, that's the list, and I definitely want to try out a Unit of 6 Morghast, because I think that could be absolutely devastating. So yeah, those are the lists. Like I say, these are just my opinions. If you disagree with them, that's absolutely fine. Like I say, I've just you know, I came back from work and I thought I'd do another video, so I haven't really spent too much time building these lists. So, you know, I haven't, you know, spent days looking at them or anything like this. It's just something I just quickly came up with because I thought it'd be quite fun to try both of them. So like I say, I'd love to hear your opinions down below, and like I say, if you disagree, let me know down below in the comments and we'll have a discussion about it, because I don't want this channel to just be me one-sided, just completely saying my point of view and not listening to anyone else's. That's absolutely what I'm not doing. The point of this is to try and come up with ideas in the videos, and then to continue those ideas in conversations in the comments. So with that, I thank you very much for watching this video, and if you've enjoyed it, please like, subscribe and comment down below, as that does always you know, help me and motivates me to produce as many videos as I can. And until next time, I thank you very much for watching this video, and remember, Nagash is all and all is one in the gash.